Hello students, this is Dr. Anup, your psychiatry faculty, and now I am in front of you for some discussion of the INI CET psychiatry questions. So analyzing the paper INI CET, they have asked some common but good question that students should have some basic idea about, and most of those questions are from our notes, or most of the questions are almost straightforward. If you have a basic idea, you can clearly answer. So let us go to those questions and high yielding areas. So the first question is, all the following are good prognostic factors in schizophrenia except. Always read the question thoroughly. I will say even read one or two times also, because be very clear. When I used to write the exam, I used to, nowadays it is all online, else I used to keep in my mind like what was the most important thing, that is except. So I used to convert a question like, so which of the following is bad in prognosis? So which is a bad prognostic factor? You can convert like that, or which are not a good prognostic factor. So this is an important area, prognostic factors in schizophrenia. You can just divide it into good and bad. So you can just remember one thing, the late onset is considered to be good prognosis. Female sex, if it is in a female sex, it is considered to be good prognosis. If there is a family history of mood disorders like depression, or that is good prognosis. Then if the individual is married, it is good prognosis. If there is a well adjusted premorbid personality, it is good prognosis. Acute onset, it is good prognosis. And the old DSM-5 subtypes, paranoid and catatonic subtype, that's a good prognosis. And predominant positive symptoms, that is good prognosis. So it is better you learn at least either good or bad, so that you won't get confused. So if I have learned the good prognosis thoroughly, then I know that if late onset is good prognosis, early onset is bad prognosis. If female sex it is good prognosis, then male sex it is bad prognosis. If there is a family history of mood disorders, it is good prognosis. If I have a family history of psychotic disorders, it is a bad prognosis. If married is good prognosis, unmarried or separated is a bad prognosis. If I have a well adjusted premorbid personality, it is sure that with improvement I will go back to a good prognosis. But if I having a personality disorder or some traits of personality disorders, it is bad. Acute onset is good, whereas insidious onset or chronic is bad. In DSM, before DSM-5, there were subtypes of schizophrenia. In ICD-10 also like that, paranoid, catatonic, then disorganized, simple, etc. Paranoid and catatonic presents with good prognosis, whereas disorganized and simple, they are having worse prognosis. I will be very happy to get a patient with the predominant psychotic symptoms, delusions, hallucinations, thought phenomenon, etc., which are the positive symptoms, because though it is very disturbing for the family members, to a psychiatrist, I know it will improve, have a good prognosis, and will respond to treatment, and they will be very happy. But if they are getting prominent negative symptoms like alogia, volition, apathy, asociality, which I have discussed previously in psychosis and all, that is a bad prognosis. So this table is very important. So we know that late onset is good, family history associated with depression is good, positive symptoms are good, but insidious onset of symptom is a bad prognosis. So the answer is C. So I hope you are clear with the prognostic factors in schizophrenia. So now, which of these are subcortical dementia? So cortical, subcortical. So you should remember Pick's disease or frontotemporal dementia, then Alzheimer's dementia, they mainly affect the cortex only, the cortical, whereas Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease, then Binswanger's disease, HIV dementia, they affect the subcortical structures. Some like vascular dementia can affect both cortical and subcortical. So Parkinson, Wilson, Huntington are all subcortical. A, B and C are subcortical. So options A, B and C, whereas Pick's is cortical. So I am just going on to few things regarding that after prognosis, the cortical and subcortical dementia. So I hope this example is clear to you. So what are the difference? The site of lesion of the cortical dementia is in the cortex, whereas the other one, it is subcortical white matter structures. So which one will present with motor symptoms? It is subcortical white matter structures like the basal ganglia which are involved. So there can be dysarthria, tremor, slowing, etc. can happen, whereas in cortical it won't be affected. Whereas higher cortical function like speech, praxis is affected in cortical dementia, whereas it is not affected in subcortical. Mood symptoms are prominent in subcortical but less in cortical, and impairment in recall and recognition is there in cortical, whereas recall is impaired but recognition is intact in subcortical. So I will once again tell you, for you to remember easily, the subcortical structures are involved in MMM, that is mood, movement, memory. So this is what you should remember: mood, movement and memory. So you should remember how to distinguish between cortical and subcortical. The higher function like praxis, speech is affected in your cortical, whereas in this that functions are not affected. Then dysarthria, no motor symptoms in cortical, whereas in the subcortical there is dysarthria, tremor, etc. Higher functions are affected in cortical but not in subcortical. And mood symptoms, mood lability, mood symptoms are prominent in subcortical. So mood symptoms in subcortical, and there is impair in recall and recognition in cortical dementia, whereas in subcortical there is recall impairment but recognition is normal. Recall with clues. For example, if you give 3 unconnected words, in cortical dementia they may be having difficulty in complete recall, whereas in subcortical, if you give a clue, sometimes they will be able to recall. So that is one thing. Coming on to the third question: which of the following antidepressant is associated with least sexual side effects? SSRI, tricyclics, SNRI, these drugs are associated with marked sexual dysfunction as a side effect. You are supposed to study the category of various antidepressants. You should know examples. Fluoxetine is an SSRI, imipramine is a tricyclic, venlafaxine is a SNRI, and mirtazapine, which is noradrenergic antagonist and specific serotonergic antidepressant. This does not have sexual side effects. Then bupropion, which is norepinephrine, dopamine reuptake inhibitor. This also does not cause sexual side effects. Then there is vilazodone, which belongs to SPARI, that is serotonin partial agonist and reuptake inhibitor. This also does not cause sexual side effects. vortioxetine, also known as serotonin modulator and stimulator. These are drugs which are less likely to cause sexual side effects. Less likely sexual side effects compared to SSRI, TCA, SNRI and monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOI. These all will cause sexual side effects, but least one is mirtazapine. So this is the answer. A male patient who lost his job recently, 1 week back. So it's a understandable life stressor is there. Following which he became irritable and had sad mood, thought of job and future made his mood even worse. He was more irritated towards people in his home and occasionally went for a movie with his friend but was able to enjoy with them. But after coming back, he again had similar symptoms. Is this depression? No. Why? Depression should have persistent low mood. It is not like it will improve someday, it will improve someday. It is persistently for more than 2 weeks have low mood. It should have more than 2 weeks for criteria. There should be anhedonia, that is loss of interest in previous pleasurable activity. So these core symptoms are not at all there. But more than that, you can see it is a recent understandable life event. A recent understandable life event like finance stresses, job loss, breakups, etc., which cause emotional and behavior disorders, which is causing some distress and dysfunction, which is a bit exaggerated out of proportion, but still. So we saw that it is an understandable life which caused him marked distress 1 week only. So he was marked distress, he feel irritable, out, etc. But at times okay with friends and all he was going to go, but again after coming back again the thoughts about job make him irritable. So this is a response, bit exaggerated response to an understandable life event, and if I have to put a diagnosis, I will put it as adjustment disorder. It is not depression because of there is no person low mood for more than 2 weeks with anhedonia as a core symptom. It is not generalized anxiety disorder because it is persistent free floating anxiety not specific to a situation, but here it is a specific stressor and the response is there. So it is adjustment disorder. A 7-year-old child presents with history of bedwetting for last 1 year at a frequency being twice a week. With thorough investigation organic causes ruled out, what should be the initial treatment plan? So we told that enuresis is an elimination disorder and the child should be minimum 5 years. It should be diagnosed minimum 5 years and there should be repeated voiding of urine intentionally or involuntarily, and the frequency should be twice per week into 3 months. So now for more than 1 year this is there. So in the management aspect, the most evidence is for the non-pharmacological bell and pad conditioning. There is an alarm device. It will be attached to the patient's undergarment. When it is wet, the bell alarm sounds, child wakes up, go to toilet. This training is gradually given. And then only we go for pharmacological therapy. In pharmacological therapy now, the first thing is desmopressin nasal spray is preferred over imipramine, which is tricyclic antidepressant. So in all the textbooks, when we see all textbooks, we can see the drug of choice is, the treatment of choice is drug imipramine, but it has got cardiotoxic effects. So desmopressin nasal spray has come. Now the ideal treatment of choice is to try non-pharmacological bell and pad conditioning after all organicity. Then you go for, if drug is asked in entrance examination, go for desmopressin first more than imipramine, which is a tricyclic antidepressant. So I hope the answer is clear. It is, the treatment plan is bell and pad classical conditioning, which has got the bladder training with ward for delaying maturation during daytime is useful for urge incontinence and all. For urge incontinence this is useful. A patient with severe depression was treated with tricyclic antidepressants and report improvement of symptoms over 4 weeks, which is the most important concern. See, tricyclic antidepressants were the initial group of drugs which act on multiple neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, etc. It was very effective in depression due to prevention of the reuptake of these neurotransmitters, but along with that it has got several side effects. The H1 blocking has caused sedation, weight gain. The alpha blocking has caused tachycardia, orthostatic hypotension. The anticholinergic effects cause dry mouth, urinary retention, constipation. The sodium channel blocking effects can cause arrhythmia and has highly prone for overdose and toxicity and arrhythmia. So that is an important thing. So it is not a safer drug for patients with cardiac problems. Still there is increased risk of seizure. All this is not preferred in elderly, prone to anticholinergic side effects, cardiac problems. So particularly the ECG monitoring for arrhythmia is something very important for the patient. So in tricyclics, that is why SSRIs, which only affect serotonin, when they came into market, they were getting more prominence than this, because tricyclics became notorious because of their lot of side effects. So ECG monitoring for arrhythmia is important in this case. A child presents with selective mutism, he is most probably suffering from. In my lecture of anxiety spectrum disorders, I have told that in DSM-5 anxiety spectrum disorders, the separation anxiety disorder and selective mutism are included in anxiety spectrum disorders. So what is selective mutism? Selective mutism, it is a consistent refusal of the child, to speak in certain situations where child is expected to speak. But in other situations child will speak, maybe like in school he is not speaking, and where he is expected to speak, otherwise it is affecting his academic and other performance. But at home or other he may be speaking, but at school he is not speaking. It is not due to any problem with the language or any other psychiatric disorder or any problem with the development of the child language or anything, no other thing, but child not speak. And it is a childhood anxiety is very prominent, and childhood anxiety disorder is there. So that is point 7. Psychotic patient presents with voluntary purposeless movement was observed standstill in the ward with negativism and flexibility. So this gives rise to a diagnosis of catatonia. Catatonia is a motoric phenomenon which consists of about 3 out of 12 features should be there, which includes stupor, catalepsy, waxy, flexibility, mutism, negativism, posturing, mannerism, agitation, grimacing, echolalia, echopraxia. These are given in my notes also, will be shared to you, like what this definition is. And what you should remember is that in catatonia, initially what we do is we give something called as a lorazepam challenge test. It was found that when lorazepam is given, the symptoms start resolving and the patient start responding. So lorazepam challenge test is useful. So that is important. A patient come to OPD with complaints of having repetitive thought that he feels his own thought only. This gives him discomfort and had to wash. So that is called as obsession. So I have told in the notes that thought disorder can be divided into disorders of thought. Thought can be divided into components of form, stream, possession, and content. In my introductory lectures on topic, I have told example of how analogy of Ganga, river Ganga from Himalayas, and likewise what is mean by form, stream, flow, everything I have told. So anyway, the two important points I have told, that I again repeat this: obsessions and thought alienation are disorders of possession of thought, and delusion is disorder of content of thought. So it is a disorder of possession of thought. The 10th question. How will you differentiate delirium from dementia? So delirium and dementia. Very important MCQ. Delirium has acute or subacute onset. It has insidious onset. There is disturbance in awareness and attention. There is impaired immediate and recent memory. Here it is remote memory, then gradually recent comes. And fluctuating sensorium. Here there is no fluctuation. So delirium starts with the most important differentiating feature is it is an acute with the level of consciousness. Acute onset and level of consciousness is the important thing about delirium. Memory impairment can present, visual hallucinations can also be present in delirium and dementia. Disorientation, agitation can also happen. Irritation all can happen. But the key point is this: delirium is a short-lasting acute and subacute onset, whereas it is insidious onset. And the key feature is disturbance in awareness and attention, whereas there is no such disturbance of awareness and attention in dementia. It's only higher mental functions or higher order functions are affected. And the immediate and recent memory along with attention is affected in delirium, whereas remote memory is affected in delirium. And fluctuating sensorium in delirium, whereas there is no such fluctuation, it is constant throughout. But here in the day to day, even day in the day itself, it shows fluctuation. So especially the fluctuating sensorium, acute onset, sleep-wake cycle problems, awareness and attention impairment are the major features in the delirium. So here the acute onset and level of consciousness is affected. So I just want to recap. So regarding those good prognostic factors in schizophrenia, understand the list which are the good and the bad. At least study good so that you can remember the bad easily. Cortical and subcortical dementia, understand the difference as well as the features. Then the antidepressants with less sexual side effects like piratazapine, bupropion, vilazodone, vortioxetine, while SSRI, TCA, SNR and MAOI have more sexual side effects. Okay. Then adjustment disorder versus depression, I told you it is important. And enuresis, Bell and Pat conditioning is a therapy. Tricyclics, be careful about arrhythmias and several side effects of tricyclics, that is important. And selective mutism is included in anxiety spectrum. Understand the features of catatonia that can be asked in MCQ, and lorazepam is initial drug that is given. And thought, there are several headings. Obsession and thought alienation are disorders of possession of thought, while delusion is a disorder of content. And differentiating point, the acute onset in delirium, the fluctuating sensorium, the reversal of sleep-wake cycle, and disturbance of awareness and attention. These are the key features in delirium that is separating it from dementia. Both of them can have psychotic symptoms, hallucinations, agitation, etc. But these are the key differentiating features. So that brings to the end of our the 10 questions asked in INI-CET. And one piece of advice I want to tell you is that revise the most repeated topics, those areas, identify the core areas like catatonia, schizophrenia, like we saw, and you should revise that and read the question thoroughly. And also, even if you don't know the question, try to exclude the answers. Sometimes if you don't know one question, try to exclude other options. Exclusion, the skill for excluding the wrong answer is also equally important as well like knowing the right answer. So some questions you may not know the right answer, but you can exclude and can reach the right answer. So psychiatry is a subject you can score, and I hope you will do well. And for coming INI-CET exam, I wish you all the best for the aspirants. Do well. Take care. Thank you.